To you remotely. Thank you all for joining us. This is an annual joint meeting with the Union Gap School Board and the Yakima School Board. We enjoy getting together with our neighbors and having these meetings, and we hope to be able to continue them in the future as well. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded. To find out how to either access the recording, it will be on our YouTube channel, the Yakima School District YouTube channel, probably within the week. And to be able to access the live stream, you can just go to the district's webpage at ysd7.org and click on Find It Fast up in the top banner. And the information is there. You can access it at that point. I see that Barb has turned on the recording and the live stream. Just for the sake of clarity, I'd like to be able to know who's in the room. So could we have roll called for both groups, please?
President Rice.
Here.
Vice President Villanueva.
Here.
Chair Martin.
Here.
Director Walker.
I'm here.
Ms. Silver.
Here.
Ms. Grunless.
Here.
Ms. Rivera.
Here.
Director Beckett.
Here.
Superintendent Gredvig.
Here.
And Superintendent Green.
Here.
Director Navarro Jr. and it looks like Maria. Rosas is not here today.
For the record, Director Navarro is approved. His absence is approved for this evening's meeting. Our first,
Correct, for the record, he's excused.
Our first point of business in this meeting is a Pledge of Allegiance. We were going to have a student lead us in the pledge, but absent the student, I've asked
President Rice, the student just showed up.
Oh, excellent.
Yes, so Vice Principal Brumley is going to introduce her.
Perfect.
Good evening, Board and Union Gap Board. Thank you for being here. I'm proud to introduce Sophia Villegas. She is a student who came from Union Gap to Davis. She plays flute in wind ensemble, and she's a cheerleader. So she's a great student, very involved at Davis. So Sophia.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophia. That was very nicely done. And what grade are you in?
I'm currently a junior.
So next year we will see you walk across the stage, right?
Yes.
Perfect. I wonder if either any of the Yakima or Union Gap board members have any questions for Sophia before she has to scurry away.
I plan on going to college and pursuing physical therapy. Yeah.
We're talking this evening about one of our subjects is transition, and how was it like for you as a student coming from a small, really intimate K through 8 school to enter as a freshman into Davis High School with probably more students in the high school than in your entire district. So what was that like for you personally?
It was kind of intimidating at first because I used to be kind of like a closed person. But once I got into the environment and like all the welcoming teachers and staff there, they made it more comforting. So it's like more of an experience to just be more out there and like more, how do I say it? Like more involved with the community.
Well, thank you. I'm glad we had those welcoming teachers and students that made you feel at home.
Our 8th graders are promoting on Thursday. So if you had any words of wisdom that I can give to them on Thursday, what would it be?
I'd say just give it a shot. Like, just go out there, even take the risk. You never know what new friendships you can make, what new opportunities you can achieve. So just take the risk, have that gut feeling, and just go for it.
Very good advice. With having both boards here, do you have any suggestions on things that we could discuss to make your transition or a student's transition to a high school in Yakima better?
Better. I can't really think of anything right now since it's just involving more students to come together, like as one. It makes it more comforting to just get into an environment. So I think like just have like more opportunities for those types of opportunities.
Thank you so much for being here, Sophia, and for leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance, and for being willing to answer our questions. I know it's hard to be put on the spot, but I think you've done a very good job today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Sophia. Okay, next we have the land acknowledgement. This is something that we read at every one of our meetings. And I have the honor of reading the land acknowledgement today. Today, the schools of the Yakima School District rest on the ancestral lands of the 14 confederated tribes and bands of the Yakima Nation. The people of the Yakima Nation inhabited more than 12 million acres across Adams, Benton, Chelan, Douglas, Franklin, Grant, Kittitas, Klickitat, and Yakima counties. Today, we honor those Native peoples who are tied to the land through history, legends, and culture. We acknowledge their descendants who live in the world today. We thank the caretakers of this land who have lived here and continue to live here since time immemorial. An acknowledgement is a simple, powerful way to show respect and a step toward correcting the stories and practices that erase Indigenous peoples' history and culture. It also honors the truth. As a school district, we will continue to build our relations with the Yakima Nation. Okay. Next on the agenda is a presentation by Kelly Riddle, and she will be talking about the 8th grade transition. Kelly.
Thank you, President Rice. So my position is Director of Admissions and Enrollment for the Yakima School District as well as Student Records. So I'm here to talk about the 2023-24 8th grade transition. As you know, we've already moved to this year's transition. So now we're looking at the next year's transition. So the timeline for that in November this fall, 2022, we'll meet with all YSD stakeholders to review the process and set timeline dates for the 23-24 selection process. I will connect with Union Gap principal around timelines and or changes at that time. January 23, end of first semester, second quarter, begin YSD communication with families and students on 8th to 9th grade selection process. Send a copy of communications to Union Gap principal. February 1st, 2023, meet with YSD stakeholders prior to family parent night presentations. Connect with Union Gap to review next steps. February 1st through the 20th of 23, CTE guidebook complete and sent to Union Gap. Union Gap and students begin and complete registration paperwork using the YSD online registration. 8th grade selection, parent-student presentation dates will be set and sent to Union Gap. They'll be both in Spanish and English like they were this year as well. February 13th to the 28th, admissions and enrollment will have the 8th grade selection process presentation in person, virtual, or to be determined. I'm not quite sure at this point. Hopefully we can be in person. February 13th and 27th, we'll have the English presentations from 6:30 to 7:30. And February 15th and 28th, we'll have the Spanish presentations from 6:30 to 7:30. March 1st of 23, high school choice forms will be emailed to 8th grade YSD students. Union Gap will receive the selection link for all incoming 8th grade students. March 8th, all choice forms due to admissions and enrollment office. March 27th through the 30th, high school placement will be emailed to students, sent to high school, middle school counselors. Union Gap will be emailed by Director of Admissions and Enrollment as soon as they become available to the public. Spring break will be the 3rd through the 7th. April 10th of 23, the appeal process will begin. That comes from my office. And I listed the reasons students will be appealing. Most generally are around enrollment in a specific location, like if they have a disability, students that are homeless, students that have siblings, make sure that, and if we have a full-time employer that works at the high school of choice. So if they're an Eisenhower or Davis employee, then they will get to choose whether their student goes to Eisenhower or Davis. We did have a few this year, but they mainly were around the sibling or twins that got separated a little bit. But our overall error was just about 5 or 6 families overall. So that was pretty good. April 21st, the appeal process will end. And then May 5th, the completion of all appeal responses will be sent to families from the Director of Admissions and Enrollment via certified mail. Any questions?
Thank you, Kelly. Because I'm at a bit of a loss not being in the room, I'm going to ask Vice President Villanueva if she would conduct the Q&A sessions so that we don't get delayed by somebody having to identify to me and hopefully have me see them. So Graciela, would you conduct the Q&A, please?
Yes, of course. We have a question for Superintendent Redmond.
I can't hear you. Is your mic on?
Oh, I think I turned it off. Yes, we have a question from Superintendent Gredbig.
On the March 27th and 30th, the high school placement will be emailed to students and sent to high school, middle school counselors. That includes our students as well?
So what we did this year that seemed to be successful was I emailed the link to, the email went out by our Director of Technology, Angela Jestrom, who a student of Skyward, excuse me. And then that was sent to Union Gap immediately at the same time that the rollout came to the students. So that came actually in a spreadsheet.
Thank you.
Am I on? Yeah, all right. So on the timeline page, first page there, the November 2022, it references you're going to meet with YSD stakeholders. Please clarify for me what you mean by stakeholders.
So stakeholders would be TNL, the group that are the director, executive director of TNL, as well as anybody that's high school principals, We didn't in the past have the Union Gap principal present for that. We then I just went back to Mr. Vincent, and then just relayed the information from the meeting. So it's going to be that basically high school, T&L directors, and assistant principals, I believe, as well. So
And that's just to the high school principals, you said?
yeah,
Oh, okay.
middle school as well. Sorry, middle
Okay.
school and high school. My fault.
What would be the hang up to including our assistant principal or principal in that?
I don't see that there would be a hang up in
Okay.
that. I just need to check and verify on that.
Okay, 'cause I'd like to see that. I think
Okay.
that's part of the whole reason we're having these kind of discussions. I think it'd be really, really valuable for them to be a part of that, just because I don't want there to be a breakdown in that process. If there's another building, thinking of us like another building, even though we're not, in that transition process, the hang up with all of that, it could probably be eliminated with a little bit more of that collaboration, I think.
Okay.
I have a couple other further pages, but I don't want to just monopolize the whole thing. I wrote down towards the end of it, is this the same schedule that all the other YSD middle school buildings are on, I guess? If that makes any sense? So like the February 1st to the 20th, 2023, the CTE guidebook, complete and sent to Union Gap. Is that sort of an outlier, or is that going to other buildings in your district as well at that same time? And the same
It's-
schedule and everything else?
Yeah, the goal is to have everything roll out the same, and the same for Union Gap as well.
Okay, that makes more sense. And then on the next page, the presentations and selection process, the fourth bullet, I just made note. It says Union Gap will be emailed by the Director of Admissions. I just wanted some clarification on exactly who at UG, I guess.
Who exactly?
Who at Union Gap, I guess.
Well, I worked with Patrick Vincent, so it's going to be,
Oh, just specifically the principal.
yeah, the principal.
Okay,
So if that is who is my continual contact, then yes. So I can reach out to him and check with him in the fall and September to
Okay.
make sure that he is in fact still the contact person. I know he
And I
has
guess
been
that's a
for-
question for Lisa. Is there anybody else you would prefer to have in that contact, like anybody in the office or anything, or is Patrick the right person for now? Yeah,
Okay, I'll continue that then.
I think that's all I had.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for members of either board? Go ahead.
So I know that I know you have a cap for Davis this year for Yakima school students, and you had one for Union Gap as well. Is there going to be a cap next year? And if so, what is the number?
So the goal is to have a 3-year balancing of both schools. So right now, I know it'll be looked at based on the current enrollment numbers and then the incoming amount of students that are in the selection. This year, it was I didn't bring that number with me. I don't want to say it unless I know for sure. But I anticipate that it will be very similar to this year, and I can let you know exactly what the number is. Yeah, it's all around balancing the schools.
I got to say just a comment on that whole process. Like that, I don't envy your task. That's got to be a really, really monumental thing to undertake. I don't know. That's kudos to you for being able to pull it off. I don't know how you guys have threaded that needle.
It's gone really well this year.
I know there's
I'm
going to be
really
some
proud
people
of
hurt by
how
it.
well it's gone. It was a team effort, but it's gone really well.
Any other questions or comments by either school board?
I just feel like the communication for this school year was really hard for our 8th graders. So this I appreciate
Okay.
a lot because I feel like our families felt very out of the loop this year, especially with this whole transition of the selection. We had a lot of 8th graders lost and families that didn't feel welcome coming into the Yakima School District because they weren't communicated to very well. Like these meetings that you have on here for the English, Spanish, February meetings, we were not invited to. Our
Okay.
parents were not invited to those meetings,
Okay.
which I'm glad to see this here, but it did kind of break a little bit of that transition for our families. So, and I don't really think that they were invited to the explanation of why this happened and why, there was a cap and why we're balancing. We're in a completely different district. They don't always understand if they don't have older siblings in the Yakima School District, they're not understanding why this is happening. So just that little bit of explanation to them and be included in this is helpful to them to feel welcome. We don't want them to send them off and not have that welcome invite to feel like they're wanted in the Yakima School District.
And that's really important. And thank you for that, because I will definitely take that information, and as we move forward, it'll be a priority. I did want to add one thing. We are moving to online enrollment. So I think that will help a little bit too. There was a lot of paperwork that was being shuffled in Union Gap too as well for the students that are enrolling. So I think that'll be a really positive, and I'll give you lots of information, your district, as we move forward on that.
Any other questions? I don't think we have any other questions, Martha.
Okay, thank you, Kelly.
Thank you.
It was a timely and important presentation, and I'm sure that the families in Union Gap will appreciate having this information in front of them. Okay, next on the agenda is YSD update on the Innovation Center with Dr. Rodriguez. Thank you, Jenny.
I never know which one is the green and which is the red. It's a fun game we play here. So thank you for being here this evening. It's a pleasure to have Union Gap School Board here this evening with our school board. Thank you for inviting me to share an update on our Innovation Center. I'm Dr. Jenny Rodriguez. I'm the I just give myself a demotion. I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning. I'm gonna hand back some duties with that. So I wanted to just share with you a little bit about a project we've been working on this year that's going to evolve over the next couple of years, but I wanted to first share with you the 3 key strategies we've identified through considerable work this year in our teaching and learning department to move our system forward. And the 3 strategies that we've identified are professional learning communities, induction, mentoring, and coaching, and principal supervision. We're doing considerable restructuring at the central office level to support these 3 key strategies and making considerable investments in the professional learning of our staff across the system. And as I talk with you this evening about the Innovation Center programs, those staff will also be participating in these 3 key strategies going forward. So the purpose of our Innovation Center building is to maintain our K-8 virtual learning opportunities for our students and families. Prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, we have had a longstanding high school program of virtual learning, but we have not necessarily had that for our younger learners. And as I'm sure you've experienced in Union Gap as well, for some kids and for some families, it's been really a wonderful opportunity. Certainly not the fit for all students, and we're very happy to be back in school. But for some families, they want to maintain that particular opportunity and program model for their kids. We're also looking to develop a parent partnership program, which is, if another way to think about it, is a homeschool cooperative program, but it's really a partnership between homeschool families and the district to provide supplemental services and enrichment for their kids. And we're planning to build that over the next year and launch in fall of 2023 with elementary students first. We also wanted to provide workspace for some of our existing central services staff in order to create a family hub at the existing central services building where you are now seated. So we will be redistributing some of our staff so that this building will really be a place for families to come for any kind of services that they need, such as enrollment, special education supports, student services, discipline, appeals. Everything will be in this one location for our families. So the work that was conducted this year, we purchased a building located on 39th Avenue here in Yakima. We have spent really the time since that purchase coordinating the zoning requirements with the city of Yakima. It's always an exciting process. We completed the bid process for lower level renovations. We're also updating the IT infrastructure throughout the building because it is about 20 years old. It's not up to date, so we need it to be. And also replacing some of the HVAC systems and making sure it's ready for both kids and staff. We have also identified staff assigned to that building for next school year, and we have a timeline to move over the summer. This summer, we will be finishing up those renovations, stringing all the new cable, getting the new HVAC system up to speed, and then purchasing furniture for our student spaces. We have designated in the building an elementary virtual learning lab, a middle school virtual learning lab, and a high school career and technical education work center, which will have hours after school for students to access. We're also coordinating completing the staff moves this summer and then begin planning for that parent partnership program work group, which will start meeting in the fall. And this is our lengthy list for next year. We want to obviously launch the K-8 virtual learning at the new location. We are updating our middle school program. Currently, our middle school program is served at Yakima Online, which serves our high school students. We work through the Edgenuity program, which includes teachers on the Edgenuity side of the house with support from Yakima School District staff. Our current K-5 program is actually Yakima School District teachers that are the teacher of record and providing those assessments and working directly with students on the content. So our middle schools will be joining that model going forward. We are also going to be launching the PLC for those virtual learning teachers next year alongside PLCs throughout our district, and opening the CTE High School Work Center with a soft launch for certification test offerings that we already have in our CTE programs. And we'll be piloting some work center services such as job placement services, job postings, resume support, interviewing, etc. And then the last piece is planning for that parent partnership program. So we will very early in the year next year be recruiting family and community members for a planning committee. We would welcome a Union Gap family to join that committee if you have an interest in your community, and developing that program of study for the co-op program, identifying the curriculum materials that would be used, and planning the initial master schedule and developing program processes and forms. Next spring, around that same time that we'll be having all of the transition for our 8th graders coming over, would be the same time that we would be publicizing the virtual and homeschool co-op offerings for 23-24 enrollment for our K-5 students and enrolling students for that program launch. So we are very excited. We're just continuing to add programs that serve our students and families. It's really important to us that we have programs that fit each family's need. It's really not a system anymore where one size fits all. And we want to be sure that we have opportunities for our families that meet what they would like for their students' education. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Rodriguez. Graciela, could you facilitate the Q&A, please?
Yes, of course. Any questions from members of either board?
I just have one question. So is this going to become the Innovation Center or the building on 39th?
The building on 39th is the Innovation Center. It will house the K-8 virtual learning, the co-op program, and
So
the
I was
CTE
confused
workforce.
about what you said where we sit. So
Sure.
what's changing here?
So in this building, we currently have student services, and we're looking at transitioning special education services enrollment registration into this particular location. So right now we're
Registration
split.
moving over here.
Yeah, we're split
Okay.
into a couple of spots here, and we would really like this building to be family facing.
Thank you.
The relocation of registration. So
Turned it off. Here we go. That red and green light's really confusing. You think I'd figure that out by now. You said moving the central registration office to that building on 39th. What is the impact that you think on the families on the east side of town accessing the registration and in Union Gap as well?
So let me clarify again. This is central services, which would be a central location to serve families, which would include registration, enrollment, special education services, and student services, which is already here in this facility that we're sitting in. The building on 39th, which is we've been calling the Innovation Center, will have the K-8 virtual learning program, the CTE Worksource Center, and the homeschool co-op program when that's up and running a year from now, as well as teaching and learning staff.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Just one quick question, I guess, sort of highlighting more about the program, just out of curiosity. What about summer school opportunities or anything with the Innovation Center? Is this only during the 180-day school year kind of thing, or is this a summer school opportunity as well for any other kind of targeted interventions or specific programs that you plan on running during the during summer, or is that not really in the works just yet?
I think that's something we would look at next year. This year, obviously, we won't be offering any summer programming there.
Right.
We have no HVAC system yet, so air conditioning is important for children. But moving into next year, we would probably look at whatever it is that we're offering at those particular levels. So if we were offering elementary summer programming, we would want to offer that same programming for students who are in the program served at that campus.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Cool.
Yeah.
Interesting.
If we did have a family that was interested in participating in your group, what would we do would we contact you?
Yes,
Or?
yeah, you'd be happy just to connect them to my office, and we'd be happy to get them on that team. Mhm.
Any other questions or comments from either board? I do have one final question on the K-8 virtual. I know that there's the program that we offer to our migrant students. Will this virtual opportunity be available to students who are considered, who are part of the migrant program?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's open to any Yakima School District student as a choice, right? So they have their boundary school, obviously, that they can attend, but this would be another option. And certainly migrant families would be welcome to enroll as well.
And how and a migrant family would access this program in the same way by contacting central services or maybe through their migrant specialist?
Yeah, the migrant specialist would be able to assist them with that process. That's really their role to make things a little easier and less bureaucratic for our families. And obviously through enrollment as well. So designating that program, that K-8 virtual learning program as their school for enrollment is the other way to get access to the program.
And for students who access that virtual program, are they still part of the Yakima School District and therefore get a device that a laptop device that they'd be able to
Yes,
take with them?
absolutely. Yeah. And then we will have learning lab space where they can come and have drop-in computer lab time with support from teachers on site. And then in addition to that, they'll have access to teachers virtually as well that will be located at that Innovation Center building.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Any other questions? No other questions, Martha?
Thank you, Graciela. This is, we are all learning along with our colleagues on the Union Gap Board because this is a brand new program for us. So thank you, Dr. Rodriguez, for the update. And it's exciting the options that we're going to have available for our families.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is a discussion about Skyward with Andy Gonzalez.
Thank you, boards. It's my understanding we're here to discuss, in particular, as it relates to Skyward, the district transfer module that allows districts, once they turn on that module, to potentially transfer student data in what seems like it should be a pretty straightforward process. But our research into this product and in working with districts that have decided to turn it on but yet not use it. We work with Auburn, Lake Washington, and South Kitsap. It really showed that that process isn't quite as efficient as you would think, as it requires a lot of data association that has to happen, data mapping we call in that kind of technical world, where course codes and all types of other data that doesn't align necessarily from district to district to be manually inputted and corrected. And when we looked at it holistically, when we're looking at, we have Q on the horizon, the resources that we need to just position ourselves to be ready for Q, and also to even think about scaling up a process that would allow for this in the district. It wasn't as high a priority as some of our other projects and initiatives that we have in place, for the simple fact of that we have a process in place. It does work, and some of the issues that have been brought forth, I think we've been working back and forth to come to an understanding of how these could be resolved between our two districts.
So may I jump in, President Rice?
Please.
Superintendent Green here. So thank you first and foremost for allowing us the time to address a concern that was brought forward by Superintendent Gredvig. Typically, this is something that is more into the weeds than we really look at from a policy standpoint, but we're certainly excited about the opportunity to clarify any concerns that may exist between this transfer of which Director Gonzalez refers. So thank you for that initial explanation. I would just go ahead and open this up more. This is not so much a presentation, but a conversation to kind of clarify some of the issues that may be kind of germinating or have germinated over the last several years. I know that 3 years ago, I believe this was brought up when I first came on board and we visited with you at Union Gap. So I think this is just circling back around to make sure that we close the loop or figure out what needs to be done moving forward. So if there are any questions or if Superintendent Gredvig would like to take over.
Yeah, it's been circling for more than 3 years, unfortunately. And I just wanted to, and I asked for it to be on the agenda to be perfectly clear, just so that our board was clear, other than a lot of emails going, because they've been told multiple times that this was, oh, this is doable. This is doable. And so I wanted them to understand that it is a massive undertaking from both districts. And having to code everything the same between Yakima and Union Gap is just not feasible. And as Andy stated, that we're moving to Q, and we're probably moving to Q a lot sooner than you are, which is going to be another problem. So I appreciate you closing the loop.
Graciela, would you facilitate the Q&A, please?
Yes, any questions from members of the board?
Well, just sort of a statement, I guess. Thank you for bringing it back up and entertaining this discussion and everything else, because it is something that has been kind of circling around for a while, and it ultimately comes from the reports that we get from our principal. We get monthly updates and everything else. Every board meeting he sits and talks about what's been going on, and especially during the high school transition time, puts a lot of work into that effort of getting those 8th grade kids migrated into their next phase of education. And this every single year comes up as a roadblock and a barrier to that. And so for them to get to a level of not necessarily frustration, but unworkability, to bring it to us enough times, we're going to return and reciprocate and ask the question of the superintendent of what can we do different. And so I think there's a little bit of naive on everybody's part. We all assumed that some of this could be done in a different way or whatever else. And we appreciate the time and attention with it, because it did seem like something that was going to be just, well, let's click a couple of buttons and migrate some database files back and forth and we'll all be good to go. Turns out it wasn't. And we do appreciate the work that was done to at least investigate it to that point and on to the next system, right? We'll see how Q does, I guess. But for what that's worth, thanks for all the effort so far.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from members of the boards?
I guess just from, like Kyle said, we appreciate it. It is hard when we have our 8th graders transition, things get lost. And so that it did seem easy for us to be like, hey, just transfer this over, Me working in middle school in Yakima and on the board in Union Gap, it's like I even had my daughter fall through the cracks in Yakima. And for instance, like Washington State history, well, there's no button that you push like you do when our 8th graders go to high school. And so she almost ended up taking Washington State history again because they couldn't find her transcript with it checked. So those kind of things is like, but me knowing who to ask and who to get that information from, but not all our parents know that. So then our kids end up taking classes that they don't need, or they don't know how to get credit from. And so, just we tell them, advocate for them, talk to these people, but we just kind of wanted a simpler way. So thank you for trying to make it smoother, but unfortunately it was not able to happen. But we appreciate all the work you put into it.
I think it should be noted that, we did look at each of the questions that were posed and then collaborated with our teams, and your teams brought our teams together to say, what are things that are happening that we could solve this problem that they're expressing here. And there are some changes in Skyward that happen and have been implemented that will address this. Q will take this further, but we understand. And again, we're always working to collaborate with groups and teams. And so we just keep the conduits of communication open, and we'll work to continue to problem solve in these areas collaboratively.
And the collaboration is key. We've tried to contact the registrars in Yakima because we weren't printing transcripts because we're not a high school with OSPI, and that's a whole different problem. And that was one of the answers that we received in that question. We print academic histories that do have Washington State history, algebra, those type of things on it. And so that I think is something that we had to bring to the registrar's attention, not to shred those when they got them, because they're used to seeing transcripts. When they're coming from a K-8 district with no transcript, they have to look for an academic history if it's a Union Gap kid. And that was the problem there.
Yeah, I would recommend when those issues arise, please make sure to loop me in, Angela Jestrom, and we'll make sure that, working through our systems, that we make sure we create the understandings that are needed and reinforce what you're saying as well.
Any other questions from members of the boards? No other questions, Martha.
Thank you, Graciela. And thank you, Andy, for that update. Andy's going to stick with us because the next item on the agenda is the Yakima School District and Union Gap School District Project Gemini collaboration.
Yeah, and so, the theme of tonight's meeting is where we intersect. And we, under the leadership of Superintendent Green, set forth a pretty lofty goal to, create our next generation equity networks. And we started working with various vendors in the space and came up with what we call Project Gemini. We'll be broadcasting our network into the community. It's the Yakima School District Network, same. So it's a uniform experience for our students, and their devices will connect and disconnect when in range and out of range. And so, our goal is really to continue to expand that network to cover as much of our communities, which is where we intersect, as possible. And so, Tony and I have been having discussions about, it'd be nice if we could, co-locate some equipment where we have stakeholders or potential future stakeholders in our area. And so, what we've committed to is making sure that we're continuing to have discussions of where that need happens. MLK is a great example of where I think we intersect, and making sure that if there is an opportunity to provide that service where we have an asset and you may not have an asset, that we explore that to the fullest extent to make sure that we don't miss an opportunity to serve our communities. I think I think we have the same goals. I mean, we're looking at the same types of technologies and the same types of networks. And so to not collaborate in this space would definitely be a disservice to our stakeholders.
Any questions from members of the boards?
I don't have a question. I just have a comment as it relates to that. I had asked Tony to start having these conversations with Andy, and he'd already started doing that. So that was wonderful, because we started looking at it. We're working with Kyle because he works in communications at Washington State Patrol, which also is right in our area. But we do have a dead zone over by MLK for sure, and a big residential area that are our students. We have one other dead zone that we're working with the city on as well. But definitely as it relates to working together on that, I think is going to benefit our students when they go to high school, and your students when they're actually in our area and not within your broadcasting area.
Yeah, I think one of our foundational statements from the get-go is that it was going to require partnerships. And we were wanting to be agile in this space and look at any potential partner, from faith-based to businesses to nonprofits and not-for-profits. And so Gemini was designed with that in mind. And so, us being here speaking about where we can collaborate is in the spirit of what we were discussing in the early opening stages of Gemini.
And specifically to that point, this is something right up my alley, like she said. So it's like, it definitely, Tony's been in contact with me about it as well, but the three of us definitely need to sit down and have a conversation. I've already started the process internally to WSP to get the authorization to put this equipment on the tower at our Union Gap facility. And there's literally nobody around the valley that has mountaintop sites that I don't have contact information for. So if you need any numbers, feel free to contact me. Let me know. It's literally what I do for a living. So let me know.
Absolutely. And I think a meeting would be great, because I think we have some vendors and partners that we've looked at to better cover the communities. And so instead of duplicating our efforts, I think having a kind of like a kickoff meeting and getting all of us on the same page would be beneficial, not making sure that we're not duplicating work or filing for FCC licenses in spaces where we're stomping on each other's frequencies, or I have my license and then you have nothing that's available. So it's going to require some engineering, but I think we're all committed to this, and there's nothing we can't solve.
I'll give you my card on the way out the door. It's right up my alley.
Excellent.
Any other questions? No other questions, Martha.
Thank you, Graciela. Thank you, Andy, for having these discussions. It's important that our boards understand these processes, and we appreciate all that you do to keep us technologically adept, as difficult as that is sometimes for some of us. Next on the agenda is a presentation on high school work groups. Dr. Ellis was going to lead this presentation, but she couldn't be with us this evening, so Dr. Rodriguez is stepping in.
All right, thank you. Excited to be here on behalf of not just Dr. Charlotte, who is the Executive Director of Principal Accountability and Leadership for our district, but also the entire high school work group team. And this is a new group, a collaborative team that we have stood up this year. So we wanted to just provide an update for you of the work that has been happening and where we're headed next. So again, I'm going to share this graphic with you. Every time I come, I bring this graphic. So the Yakima board is used to seeing it. So this is really falling in this first level of professional learning communities. We believe very firmly as a teaching and learning department that it's important to have the folks who are on the front lines really be a significant part of decision making. They truly have the best data and best awareness of what our students need. They're on the ground. They spend much more time with them than we do from a central services standpoint. And so it really is about listening to our folks in the field as we are thinking about decision making. So one of the groups that we stood up this year was a high school work group. This is their purpose statement: to provide time and space for high school leadership to collaboratively plan, implement, and assess initiatives, programs, and services that impact students' educational trajectory. We do have representation from all 4 of our high school programs here in Yakima, including Davis, Eisenhower, Stanton, and Yakima Online. We have all 4 principals who get together regularly on this team in the same room together and work collaboratively, which is wonderful. We have assistant principals from our 2 large comprehensive high schools, counselors from each system that attend. We have representative department chairs from both Davis and Eisenhower, a certain number from each that sit on that team. And then we also have district representatives from our career and college readiness department and our special education services department. So it is a rather large team, and it really is designed for us to be able to move our high school system forward, regardless of which school students attend. So no matter whether they get their first choice or their second choice for high school, they can be assured that they're going to get a really great quality education in our system. The work that this team has done this year was an initial exploration of grading practices. We did complete some course guidebook and course offering updates this year. And then it's been some logistics of just getting the high schools to work together around coordinating intersession opportunities, coordinating high school, summer school offerings and schedules, and then of course, preparation for our graduation ceremonies, which are coming up quickly. Next year, the high school work group will focus on supporting PLC implementation across the high school system with a lot of collaborative work across our high schools, especially our 2 large comprehensive high schools. We will be looking at high school advisory alignment. Our high school advisory program is wonderful to provide social emotional learning for our students, but it looks a little different at every building. So we want to make sure that students are having consistent targets and achieving those targets in that landscape. And then continued exploration of grading practices at the high school level. We will be putting in place a new course proposal process in the fall and course guidebook and alignment to career areas. So when you get those career guidebooks next year, they'll look a little bit different than they did this year. And then we will start the conversation around terms, calendars, and schedules. So there's a variety of thoughts and ideas about all of those topics from each of our high schools. And so we're going to start having that conversation collectively. It's been a really good team. It is rare to have comprehensive high school principals that work well together, and truly having this high school work group in place has really built the bond, particularly between Principal Diner at Eisenhower and Principal Hasty at Davis. They routinely get together to talk about instruction, assessment, logistics, safety, and it truly just is going to benefit our students at all of our high schools in Yakima. So with that, happy to answer any questions.
Graciela, could you facilitate the Q&A, please?
Yes. Any questions from members of the boards? No questions.
Jenny, you must have done a bang-up job with your presentation. You managed to put all board members into silent mode. Good for you. Thank you,
I'll put
Jenny.
that in my evaluation for Dr. Green. Thank you, Martha.
Okay, and the last item on our agenda are other topics from board members. We're just going to open this up, and then what I would like to do is, just prior to adjournment, allow the superintendents an opportunity to reflect on tonight's meeting. So Graciela, could you facilitate this for me?
Yes, of course. Any other topics from members of either board?
Well, just, I guess probably should have talked about this when Andy was up, but maybe this is a question for you, Superintendent. The transition for you guys to this queue system, how do you see that going for you? Any sort of thought process for you on that, I guess?
That
From
is
your level?
that is definitely an Andy question. He started laughing in the back row when you asked
Yeah,
that
I
question.
caught that.
Yeah, this is a big project, I think, at any level, at any district. And so, we're starting with our data sanity project and kickoff this summer. So we'll be looking at our data and looking at it through some learning spaces to see how compatible we are in getting into Q, which is where most districts have struggled. It's kind of like we were talking on the transfer of transcripts. It seems like it should just port over, but that's never the case. So we're going through some data sanity routines and making sure that we're positioned where we need to be. And then for us, we really transition into training up our staffs, because the tasks do change, and having those PD sessions to make sure everybody's ready when when our launch happens. And so for us, it's a very scoped and sequence initiative that is going to be very lockstep in making sure our data is ready, then our people are ready, and then ultimately put forth the best effort we can in getting in there. And so really it starts with our data and it ends with our people, making sure they feel comfortable That's generally the parts when we've synced with districts that were not as robust as they could have been. And I think when you're not honoring that effort that needs to happen out there, I think people sometimes feel a little disenfranchised, and that leads to other problems. And we're wanting to make sure that we cover that in a very meaningful way.
I don't know if it's just ESD or if it's OSPI specifically, or who else is driving the specific push for us, but they're really hot and heavy for us to get going on it and sort of almost feel like the test bed. So I was just wanting to get everybody else's thoughts on what that looks like down the road for everybody, you know?
Yeah, we've asked to go last
Yeah.
in our area.
That's all I had. Thank you for coming back up.
Oops. No other topics, Martha.
The beauty of microphones, right? They have to be on in order for you to be, others to be able to hear you. Thank you, Graciela, for being my eyes in the room tonight. I very much appreciate everything that you have done to support me over the last few months as I make this transition in my life. And I want to also thank the members of the Union Gap School Board for joining us, and the superintendent from Union Gap for joining us tonight. As I said at the beginning, this is always a wonderful opportunity for us to be able to have conversations, and both groups hear the same message from staff that we all need to hear and know and understand and know about. So at this point, I think I'd like to invite Superintendent Gredvig if she has any closing remarks.
The big thing for me was the collaboration and the communication. I think has definitely improved. I think there's definitely a plan for that to even improve more with the presentations today. I'm very grateful for Andy and his collaboration with Tony for sure, because I think there's some great things on the horizon between the two of us for sure. Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Dr. Gredvig, Superintendent Gredvig. Dr. Green, do you have any closing thoughts?
Do I have a time limit, or can I just go on?
Well, you know, you could talk probably until people start walking out of the room, and
All
then
right.
I would take that as a hint.
Well, first and foremost, thank you, board members from Yakima, but certainly Union Gap board members for your work to provide quality education for students coming into the Yakima School District. We're honored to have your children as part of our district. I also want to thank Superintendent Gredvig for her advocacy. I've been able to observe her over the last several years. During the pandemic, obviously, it became a time of reaction, but also trying to be proactive. And to see the way that she advocates for Union Gap with the state and with other superintendents from around the area has been just something that is very satisfying. And I want you to know that you have somebody that does advocate for your students at a very high level. I also would be remiss if I didn't mention just the great team that we have here, aside from our school board, who has just done a phenomenal job setting direction for us as a district. Right before the shutdown of the pandemic in March of 2020, we had completed a strategic plan that we had yet to share with Union Gap, and it probably should have been something that we have done in the interim. So I am very hopeful that we can come maybe at an invite and share more about our strategic plan, which is certainly something that affects the students that you do send to us. It's a very robust and ambitious plan with 5 community commitments. The first centering around early learning, but it also contains dual language goals and beyond graduation, among others. And we'd be more than happy to share that with you. It is accessible on our website. Strategic Plan Yakima School District would take you to that document. There has been significant change in our district over the last 3 years. In fact, I counted 10 or 11 of us in the room here from Central Services, and 10 of us are either new to the district in the last 3 years or new to our position. The only one is Andy over there, who's our rock in staying in that position. but I think it speaks to the creativity, innovation, and the way that the rest of the state is positioning Yakima as a change agent. We have a very good relationship now with OSPI. In fact, we met with Chris Reichel, I think, twice over the last 2 weeks around movement to create opportunities for students at the high school level to achieve an AA degree without leaving the actual campus itself. So one example of some innovative events that are happening, I think we had Dr. Rodriguez share our plan with the Innovation Center and what that can mean for our students, both in the homeschool world, in the co-op area, but also along the lines of online learning and what that can do for students who really fall into that category and find that as a positive area that impacts them. Lastly, we know that there have been significant events that have happened in our country over the last several years and last couple of weeks. If we look at what happened in Uvalde, Texas, and I want you to know that we are taking very aggressive steps, and this was before what happened, to assure as much as we can the safety and security of our students. Kudos to our Assistant Superintendent Locke, who didn't present today, but has been very proactive in assuring that we have everything in place that we would need to hopefully address anything planned or unplanned. Now, I don't want to be over the moon about, potentially what we have in place. I know that when we're talking about somebody coming onto campus or challenges that are facing our country, that there's only so much that we can do. However, I also want you to know that I have a daughter at Davis, a son at Eisenhower. I send them to school every day, knowing that they are part of a system where we have many things in place to assure their safety and their security. And so I would entertain, if I know that this is not a place, maybe the time to do this, but maybe at another date, if you wanted to know more about our safety protocols, we'd be happy to come and present. Maybe next year we could come and share some of that information with you in a more formal setting. But I'm very proud not only about of the individuals who have done this work across the board. As you see our superintendent team there at the small table away from the Thanksgiving table here up front. But we're so thankful for their work and their efforts in their positions from HR, teaching and learning, operations, and then our legal team as well, who has done just a great job also. So with all of that, I know I could go on and on. That's why I asked for a time limit. You take a risk when you give me the mic, but I don't get you very often in front of me. And I just want you to know that I'm very proud of the work that we've done over the last 2 years. We have not just rested on our assets, so to speak. We've gotten busy and been proactive in building not only a model to have opportunities, have different types of benefits in outreach across the board. As Dr. Rodriguez said, one size does not fit all, and we recognize that. And we've made some very tough decisions over the last year to make sure that our students, your students, have every opportunity that they deserve moving forward. And part of that was the balancing of the high schools and resources. Part of that was creating an early learning center for our students here, so that they have advantages moving forward throughout our system, in recognizing that those youngest learners, and thank goodness you have such a good program at Union Gap, are ready by third grade and then moving on through high school. So with that, just again, thank you for the time, President Rice, and thank you for this opportunity to come together as a unified board for an evening. And anytime you need anything, I know you'll reach to Superintendent Gredvig, but please, if through her, she finds it, you can reach out to me as well, but I'd certainly want you to touch base with your superintendent with any questions, but more than happy to answer anything that you would have now after this meeting or in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Green. And if there's nothing else for the good of the order, going once, going twice, we are adjourned. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending this evening, and please travel safely going home. Take care.